Alright guys, welcome back to another episode of Tony's Temple. I'm your host, Tony. Today we got a returning guest, Ian. Ian, say hi.
Hello.
We also have a new guest. This is one of Megan's friend, Robbie.
Ahoy, how are we?
I think everything's good. Today's what, Saturday?
Saturday, yeah. I think it's the 7th.
Yeah. Well, the only thing that's really going on Saturday right now is what the Johnny Depp thing, right? So we got to sort that thing out. To be honest, I don't know enough about it. I know that Johnny Depp, they're in court. Mm-hmm. And that's it.
He's in court for something. I don't know what exactly,
yeah.
But they're there, and it's a great time.
Yeah, everyone's having a great time just watching on TV, seeing it unfold. But yeah, that's as much as I know. So it has something to do with Amber Heard, his wife, accusing him of
ex-wife,
abusing her ex-wife, abusing her.
Yeah,
right. And his social reputation got dinged because of her. And like, there's so many things to talk about. Like, where do we even begin?
So I can give a little bit of a decent background. So Depp and Heard were married for 4 years, 5 years, something like that. And they divorced back in 2015, 2016, if I'm getting the numbers correct. Some of the numbers are mixed up in my head, but I know that not long ago they got divorced, like a few years before the pandemic. And right before or right at the beginning of the pandemic, Amber Heard came out with accusations saying that Johnny Depp had abused them during the entirety of their relationship together, up to and possibly going beyond their divorce officially back in the mid 2010s.
What's her definition of abuse?
Physical abuse, like I've seen her being struck by him, her going and being sexually assaulted by him during their marriage. Just general misconduct on his part towards her, such as like coming home drunk or coming home on drugs and doing things to her. You can sue people for that now? I mean, you can sue people all under the banner of abuse if there's like any sort of abuse going on, okay. And it's like, but it's like she never made any sort of official report to the police about it or anything like that. She just came out saying, "I'm the victim of abuse," and just everyone in the media ate it up, right? To the point where we are now with Johnny Depp, kind of basically where
this was just like at the height of the Me Too.
Yeah, at the height of the Me Too. She was one of the Me Too people that came up saying that her former spouse. She never named him exactly, by the way, but it ended up being everyone knew who she was talking about, and just started firing Johnny Depp left and right. He lost his parts in Pirates of the Caribbean. He lost his parts in Fantastic Beasts, and every other franchise he's been a part of, just kind of gone.
Yeah, like, and who would want to hire somebody after like they're being accused of some shit like that, you know?
Yeah. So then fast forward a few years, and we're now dealing with the court case after he's brought on a bunch of evidence, including audio recordings that show that Amber Heard was actually the abuser, not the abused in the entire marriage. And there's audio recordings saying that like Johnny Depp was where she was going and saying like, you got to man up, you just got to take the hits, you can't do stuff like that. So
yeah, and I mean, a lot of it is coming back on Amber Heard because like there's the infamous thing about her pooping in his bed and stuff
I heard about that.
And then there was one time where she like cut part of his finger off with a broken glass bottle and stuff like that.
What the fuck?
And I mean, just listening to a lot of the stuff that's coming out in the court case, it sounds like both of them were pretty shitty people to one another.
Well, it depends which one's telling the truth.
Right, and I mean, with everything
did she poop the bed?
Yeah.
I mean, is the poop in the pudding?
I'm pretty sure it is.
Poop is in the pudding, bro.
Now, when it comes to, as Johnny Depp put it, human excrement, when it comes to that, the only person that actually did anything on that level was fucking Amber herself.
And it all comes down to, like, with every other thing in the world, there's two sides to every story, and then somewhere in the middle there's the truth.
Right.
So I believe that both of them were probably really crappy to each other. And, you know, obviously, you know, if you're not happy in a relationship, that's no excuse to abuse anybody. Yeah. Just leave the relationship.
I don't understand why did both of them pretty much stay in the relationship for that long.
Yeah.
In the first place, after all the abuse. And, like, I feel bad for Johnny Depp because I remember Pirates of the Caribbean, right? Well, he was in Pirates of the Caribbean, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Jack Sparrow.
Yeah,
okay,
Jack Sparrow.
I was
good old Jackie.
Yeah. That's crazy, man. Like, he had a memory in the back of my mind, you know? Like, honestly, I don't know who Amber Heard is.
She was Mira in Aquaman.
Oh,
the Jason Momoa one.
She's done other parts that are notable, but I don't remember a single fucking one, to be honest with you. And it's not that I didn't care about her. It's just like she was never anything I was interested in up until Aquaman.
Yeah.
Wait, so why do you guys think this is like on the media now all of a sudden? Because like the court is the emotion. Is that why?
Well, I think. You have your superficial reason, and if you want to put a tinfoil hat on, there's also conspiracy reasons. But I feel like the superficial reason, just on the surface, it's generally when you think about abuse, especially when it comes to like spousal abuse, the automatic assumption is the man is abusing the woman, and I feel like the male being abused in these situations is sometimes overlooked, and I feel like this case is really kind of painting a different picture of that narrative that yes, men can be the victims of abuse.
Right.
Because obviously with society they think that if you're a man being abused, just don't let it happen. Like why are you letting it happen? But then it comes into I was defending myself. Well, why do you have to defend yourself? So it's a big.
Why do you have to defend yourself? It's a woman.
Yeah.
You can go and just like hold her and not have to worry about getting hit because you're stronger than her and stuff like that. It's like no. Some dudes just they can't fight back or they don't know how to fight back, and if they do know how to fight back, then they know that it's going to look worse on them if they try to fight back.
And let me tell you, I was in the Marine Corps and I knew quite a few women that could whip my ass very easily. There are some women that are very, very strong people, and I think it really just kind of comes down to it's a shattering of a narrative, right? That women are always the victims and men are always the abusers. And like I said, I think probably both of them are somewhat guilty to a degree.
Right.
And I don't think it was a healthy relationship.
I mean, and from what I've heard, Johnny Depp has more proof than she does. So all she has is like accusation, pretty much, right? And like news article.
More or less.
Like, but like he actually has like recordings.
Yeah, like stuff. In the recording, like to go the whole women are always the victims thing. She even makes she even mocks him, saying that like no one's gonna believe you if you try to say that you were the victim and stuff like that. In the recording that they played, that came out showing that she was the abuser instead of the victim.
Oh my god, I didn't know it was that bad.
Yeah, she straight up said, go tell them, tell them that you, Johnny Depp, a man, are the victim of abuse, and no one's gonna believe you. And
what the fuck?
Yeah. So that part was really the big one that people, and then also the lawyer for Amber Heard has just been an absolute train wreck.
I've
Objection, hearsay.
Yeah, and then there was the one part where he asked Johnny Depp 5 different times within a span of about 2 minutes if that was his signature on a piece of paper.
Right.
And by the end of it, Johnny was just like, for the 4th time, yes.
Right.
That's my signature.
It's like speaking to it like an idiot.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, there was a lot of memes going around about her lawyer just like doing a super shit job.
Oh yeah,
I don't know what the fuck he's doing.
Yeah.
I don't know what cereal box she found the number for this guy, but like holy shit, some of the things.
She found on the back of the fortune cookie.
That lottery number, she ended up using it as a phone number instead, and just happened to get a lawyer.
Hey, you're a lawyer. I found you a fortune cookie. That's all you had.
It's like watching. You ever seen the movie My Cousin Vinny?
Oh, why does it sound so familiar?
It's got Joe Pesci in it and Marissa Tomei.
Yeah, Aunt May in the new Spider-Man movies.
Ooh.
Yeah.
And what was the kid's name that played the Karate Kid? What was his name? That actor?
Fuck. Oh god. And I was just watching Cobra Kai the other day.
I am the worst person when it comes to celebrity names. So I am the wrong person for that.
But the basis of the film is that these 2 kids from New York are driving through. It's either Mississippi or Alabama, one of the 2. Okay. And they stop at a rest stop, and the main character like accidentally steals a can of tuna fish or something.
Okay.
And after they leave, the clerk at that place gets shot.
Oh.
And the police catch up to them, and they think they're being arrested for the tuna fish. So they're like, "Yep, we did it. It's all we did this. I'm sorry. It's just a can of tuna fish." And the arresting officer's like, "You realize you're confessing to murder, right?" And they're both just like, "What do you mean? We stole a can of tuna fish. Right. That's all we did." And so then Joe Pesci comes in. He's the family lawyer. And then you find out throughout the movie that like he's just supremely underqualified to do this. Like he failed the bar like 6 times, and he's only been practicing law for like 6 months or something like that, and he's only done like small claims. But it's made as a comedy, right?
Right.
And there's one part where after the first session of court, and Joe Pesci just like shits the bed, the main character's friend calls in for the public defender because he doesn't want to use Joe Pesci as his lawyer.
Okay.
And then the public defender gets up there and he has like a really bad stutter and he asks a really stupid question that the answer to it makes the kids look worse.
Ooh.
And it just reminds me a lot of that because it's like a lot of basically circus act in the middle of a courtroom.
Right.
And you would think it was being played for comedy, but it's legitimately this guy trying to do his job, in air quotes.
I mean, if you were the lawyer and you're given what Amber gave him, like, I mean, what grounds can you possibly stand on? Like, what can you possibly say?
I mean, OJ got off.
If the hand don't fit, you must acquit.
I mean, if you're a good enough lawyer, you can make a case for anything.
That's a good point.
I mean, there's a reason that they say that, you know, all lawyers are going to end up in hell because they're all liars. Like, you know, I don't know. I'm like Ian. I just want to know what cereal box that she got his number from because he's just inexperienced or inept, one of the two.
I mean, by the end of the day, it boils down to, like, what actually happened.
Yeah.
You know, because if she's accusing him of all this stuff and he hasn't done it, all right, that's one thing. Or he did all this to her and, like, he actually didn't do it. I mean, like, I don't know what to believe. Mm-hmm. Right? So, I mean, where's the case now? I mean, excuse my ignorance. I don't really know what the hell's going on with this case other than that.
To my knowledge, Amber Heard is pretty much on the stand at this point, giving basically her defense of what he said and her, because they're basically suing each other.
Right.
Like Johnny Depp was originally suing her for defamation of character.
The reputation.
Yeah, and then she was like, okay, well then I'll sue you for defamation of character and $10 million in suffering and damages. So they're both suing each other, so they're both being cross-examined, and I think, you know, Johnny had his whole like week on the stand, and so now it's Amber's turn. I mean, if you look at public opinion is very much behind Johnny.
Agreeable. I mean, I get that.
Yeah. I just think it's very dangerous in a situation like this, especially when it's like a domestic case where you deify one party and you completely and totally other the other side. Mm-hmm. Especially in a situation like this, like you were saying, like it comes down to what actually happened.
Right. So
you don't want to assume that, you know, one of them is completely correct and one of them is completely wrong.
Right. I don't know. Right now, I think it's just going to be one of those situations that's going to blow over. It's just something that people talk about right now. I'll put on my tinfoil hat, but you know, when COVID happened, that's all that everyone ever talked about, right? And then the whole Ukraine thing, that's all everyone ever talked about. And then the Will Smith thing happened, that's all everyone ever talked about. And then now this, and then we got the whole Roe versus Wade, right? But my point is, I'm starting to notice a pattern where the media just talks about this stuff, like Reddit, you know, where you get all your articles, like about YouTube, right? Facebook. Yeah. This is blasted all over the place, and then it's kind of hard not to talk about it, you know. And I was on a walk earlier this morning, and I was thinking like, okay, why don't I start the podcast with the boys? What good topic can we talk about? You know, so all the topic that we're talking about right now is kind of relevant, and then like it makes sense for us to talk about it. But if I were to talk about something about completely random that happened 30 years ago, like it wouldn't make good content. Does that kind of make sense? It's like it's a system that's made up where it's fueling itself when the more we talk about it, I guess.
Right.
You know, so this is just like another one of those fuels, or am I like. Or my tinfoil hat too tight?
Well, no, that's what I was saying when I said, you know, there's a superficial reason that everybody cares about this case, and then there's the tinfoil hat reason, which is what are they trying to distract us from? Mm-hmm. Because a lot of times you'll see that the government and big tech and the media conglomerates, they're not above trying to make one thing a super relevant issue to hide from something else happening. I mean, you know, all this is going on and people are talking about Johnny Depp and Amber Heard and now the Roe versus Wade leak, but the Fed actually just increased interest rates to the highest percentage that they've ever been since they've been since 2009.
Well, in like the U.S. in general? Or?
Yeah. The Federal Reserve increased interest rates. I think it was like 5.8% is what they went up to.
Interest rate for housing?
Yeah, like housing and investments and stuff like that. So it's basically making things more expensive and making money gain more over time, but that's contributing to inflation. And because you have a housing market right now that's very buyer or seller friendly, and now you're going to raise interest rates on money, which basically ends up putting more money in circulation, which it's going to there's a lot of economists saying that we're probably looking at another 2008 situation where the housing bubble is probably going to burst again, and with the amount of inflation and it being the highest levels that it's been in years, it might end up being a worse recession. To use a term that Ben Shapiro likes to use a lot, we have a lot of stagflation right now, where the economy is really stagnant, but your money is still being devalued by inflation. And so when that happens, eventually, as things get more expensive, and you've got people on both sides who have really stupid takes on it. I think the dumbest one I heard was from Chuck Schumer, who's I'm pretty sure he's in the Senate. I think he's the Senate Majority Leader for the Democrats.
Okay.
And he said that the solution to inflation is to raise taxes so that people have less money to spend, so there's less money in circulation.
What? That's kind of sus.
Which is the counterpoint to basically just about any economy in the existence. The less money that the people have to spend, the less the economy will grow, to the point where you could even have the economy start to recede because of the lack of spending on everyone's part.
But everyone thinks they have a solution, and there's never been a situation where one solution kind of solved the economy in grand scale. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, what do you think about what he said?
About what Chuck Schumer said?
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, I'm very small government in my thinking, so I think the idea of taxing people, right? Yeah, and I think the idea of taxing people for the purpose of making sure they don't have a lot of money to spend is honestly pretty insidious if you think about it. It's basically the government saying, I'm going to control what you can and can't do with your life just so that we can try to fight inflation.
Right, that we caused.
Yeah, that we caused. That, both parties have caused over the last 50 years, and the Federal Reserve has just been printing money. And I mean, I don't know if you know this or not, but in the last 3 years, we have printed 40% of all the money to have ever existed on planet Earth.
It's all on computers. No, half of it's not even physical anymore.
Exactly.
Right?
And so, I mean, generally speaking, when people don't have a lot of money, they're not going to spend money. So then tax revenue goes down, and companies have less gross profit margins to work with.
Right.
So they can't put as much into R&D. They can't put as much into development. And, I very much am a believer that the freer an economy, it generally works out better. There needs to be a little bit of okay, you can't have a monopoly.
Right.
So you
can't mess up the other country's economy by inflating whatever product you're selling, or reasonable stuff, reasonable control, not you're poor, you need to spend less money in order to save more money.
Yeah.
You can't do shit like that. That's crazy.
Yeah, the type of control that I would advocate for is stuff like Teddy Roosevelt did, where he busted up the trusts and the big steel monopolies and oil monopolies and everything like that.
Yeah.
But then you also have economists that are we need price setting, and you can only charge a certain amount for this product regardless of what it's actually worth. And then you have you've had a lot of times where with farmers, the federal government will go in and they'll pay farmers to destroy part of their crop so that it keeps the value of that crop high.
Right.
And so it's just a lot of things that our government has done in the past, and it looks like, history is always destined to repeat itself. So I think we're probably in for a rough couple of years coming up, and if you have any extra income, I'd advise probably stuffing it under your mattress, get it out of the banks. That's my opinion. But
start buying gold bars and silver.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Start collecting action figures, and hopefully they raise in value. Right.
Well, Megan's set.
Yeah, she's that blind thing, right?
Ain't nobody touching that Gundam collection she's got.
Dude, that thing's gonna go up.
Gundam and Iron Man. I forgot about the Iron Man over her desk.
It's gonna go up by 1,000%. I don't know.
She's still not going to sell it, mind you.
No, I mean, of course.
She's never going to sell any of that shit. Yeah. She's going to leave it there until it all finally disintegrates long after her death.
You got an opinion on this, man? Do you think it's going to affect us in any way? I mean...
Which part? What?
The whole economy thing.
The whole economy thing? Yeah. I can see it going towards the bursting of another housing bubble, because this is something that me and Megan have talked about, me and just basically about anyone has talked about, is... It seems a mixture of both what they did in 2008 and prior to 2008, and a lot of real estate investment going on at the same time as well. So it's a culmination of issues that we've already seen happen, and that we have already warned people, hey, if you do this again, you're going to have a problem, and you're going to basically cause everything to go to shit again, versus people coming in and going and going and creating this seller's market, which is the term that's usually used in real estate, and just bumping the value of houses up even beyond the point where like you're not just making a happy profit anymore. Now this is going into the area of this house is now being price gouged.
Right.
And
it's being abused at this point.
Yeah, it's just the market's being abused at this point by real estate investors and other people who just don't want to. They just see it nothing as like just a profit machine of sorts. So it just looks like it's going to go into a negative direction at some point, and we're going to have a housing crisis again on all fronts of this. I mean, my thoughts on it are a little harder to put together, but it's just like I see the writing on the wall, and I just see that it's going to become another problem down the line.
It's like a prophecy. Like you see it coming, and you're like, oh shit.
Yeah, basically, it's like I may not be able to like interpret that into plain language for people to understand, but I can sit there and just be like, that's going to turn to shit, and we're all going to have a bad time.
Yep.
Those of us that aren't already holding on to a decent amount of money, so that way we can just pretend that problem doesn't exist.
Right.
Well, and it might not even come down to that, because I mean, like the 2008, 2009 recession or whatever at the end of Bush, start of Obama, that was really kind of a formative time for me, because you know I was just starting high school and everything like that, and you know my dad he works in sales and for home security and commercial security systems and stuff like that. And, right before the housing bubble burst and the economy went in the tank, we had a nice, like, 3,500 square foot house. And we had, nice. My parents had multiple cars, and we had a boat, and we had all this nice stuff. And then the housing crisis happened, and my dad had to close his side business, and he had to pay a bunch of unemployment tax and all this other stuff. And we ended up losing the boat and losing one of the trucks. And ultimately, the house got foreclosed on. My parents had to declare bankruptcy. So, like, I've seen firsthand how this stuff can affect like the people who are just clawing their way out of the lower middle class,
right?
Where it basically just takes a boot and puts it on their forehead and pushes them right back down the hole.
Dang, dude.
And I think it's a very similar problem to what happened in 2008, but it's a very different problem also, and I think it's a worse problem.
Right.
Because in 2008, the issue wasn't necessarily the inflation of currency or anything of that nature. It was the banks who were basically basically being told by the government, you have to give these people a mortgage no matter what.
Yep.
And
don't worry about them paying it back or anything. Just keep selling, bro.
And that's where you get the phrases of like too big to fail and stuff like it's like, oh well, if 1 million people default on their mortgages, well that bank's too big to fail, so it'll be fine. But it starts happening, and then all of a sudden, these banks actually aren't too big to fail.
Right.
The problem that you're running into now is that the currency is being inflated at such an astonishing rate, and one of the only really good investment tools right now in real estate, if that bubble bursts and values plummet, then you have people with a lot less currency that's worth a lot less going forward. Right. So I feel like unless something's done to fix this inflation problem that we have, then it's going to end up being probably worse than the 2008 recession, I would say.
Wait, so if you don't use money, were you going towards the direction of like Bitcoins and stuff, or like where were you going?
So, I mean, I'm less in favor of like crypto, and I'm more in terms of like physical assets. That's what I believe in.
Gold,
so like you were saying, gold, silver, stuff like that.
Action figures.
Yeah. I mean, really.
The actual non-fungible tokens.
Right.
Actual assets physically being able to be held.
Right.
And it's funny that you bring up NFTs because like the NFT market just crashed.
Yes! Oh my god, wait.
I could have sworn I sent you that meme of like fucking the fire in Hank Hill's eyes as the market's crashing and he's just maniacally laughing.
Oh, dude. Okay.
They crashed what, like 99% in value?
It was insane. And so I always find that, with something like a cryptocurrency, like I tried to get into Bitcoin on the first really big dip because it went like all the way up to like, what was it, like 58K per Bitcoin or something? And then
62 is the all-time peak for Bitcoin.
And then it dipped back down to like 27.
Yeah.
And so I tried to get into it a little bit, and then it ended up being it's too unstable for me personally. And I realized
you have to get lucky. That's the thing.
Yeah,
that's the whole point of like Bitcoin. Dude.
Like everyone that got rich off of Dogecoin, people who got in when it was under 2 cents a coin, and then they were able to sell when it skyrocketed to 75 cents a coin. Like those people made bank, and I don't know how many of them actually managed to keep their wealth afterwards or what. Like, but that was probably the most substantial gain you'll see from any crypto in such a short period of time.
It was more
people who are long-term Bitcoin investors. Yeah, no, they'll see profit bigger than that for years to come. Especially people that started before Bitcoin was even popular.
Right.
But
it started off with like a trend where like that makes a lot of money, but like once everyone started jumping on the train, like that's when the value like
to the moon. They said to the moon.
Well, and it's like everything else in life. You know, if you're smart about it and you do it with a little bit of restraint, you could probably make a good bit of money off of crypto. But you have to really know what you're doing when you get into it. A lot of people are going into Bitcoin and they think, oh, I'm going to buy like, you know, this much of it today, and then in a week I'm just going to sell it all for thousands of dollars.
No, that's me. Well, maybe I didn't have any plans on selling within a week, but like I did kind of went in just buying crypto, not realizing it was at like all damn near its peak. That's what happened with me with Dogecoin, dude. Like I got it when it was at a good rate, and I should have sold, but I didn't. I kept it, so now I'm in the negative, bro. So it fucking sucks.
Yeah.
But before I started this whole entire podcast, like, you know, from the very get go, I had conversation with my brother and my cousin, and like they know I fucking hate NFT. I can go on for days about NFT and like how stupid, like how nonsensical it is, and like when you say it crashed, like what do you mean it crashed? Like what happened?
Like a stock market,
like
the value of them.
Well, the thing is, you can create NFT like left and right, so like
you can literally go onto someone's Twitter page, and if their NFT. If they have an NFT set as their profile picture, you can literally just be like, copy, paste. Yeah. I just stole your NFT. It's not like I know there's a whole like metadata point of what is actually an NFT, but that doesn't really matter to a lot of people. A majority of people, I would say, that understand technology and data and stuff like that in the NFTs, and it's like You're not buying a Mona Lisa when you buy an NFT. You're buying some random fucking ape picture or some shit like that whenever you're going and buying an NFT. Some goofy picture that someone made and made different iterations of over and over and over again. There's no inherent value in that. There's inherent value in the Mona Lisa because it is a one of a kind piece of art created by a long dead artist versus this
is literally one of a kind.
Literally one of a kind. You will never find another piece of art that is the Mona Lisa ever.
Right, you can copy it, but like
you can copy the Mona Lisa, but the actual Mona Lisa will stay in the Louvre until someone decides to either steal it or sell it from the Louvre to another art museum or someone else for an obscene amount of money. I guarantee it.
Right.
You cannot go and have that same kind of effect with a monkey NFT.
Right.
That monkey exists in a different form somewhere else.
Right.
You will not have that unique picture be anywhere else.
Well, it's more of like a certificate. Like the image could be everywhere, but you have the certificate that says, "Hey, this belongs to specifically me." But what good is that? You know?
Well, and the problem that I think NFTs ran into is that the NFT only holds value if people care about its supposed value. Yep. So when everybody realized how stupid NFTs were, and they were like, okay, nobody cares anymore. Yep. You can't sell a monkey picture for $10K if nobody thinks it's worth $10K.
Exactly. So the ones that did buy the NFT, like their whole sole purpose is to get on Twitter and just like raise awareness. It's like, hey, look how cool this NFT is, and like that's the only way they can retain its value by having it, like the public grow attention to it. If there's no attention to it, then like it has no value.
Yeah, NFT bros, basically that's their whole shtick, is just they try to inflate the value of NFTs by going and talking about how great it is, recruit other bigger people to be a part of the NFT schemes. That's why for a little bit of time you did see celebrities actually jump on the NFT bandwagon. You saw game developers jump on the NFT bandwagon. Companies themselves, like full corporations, like try to get in on this bandwagon to try and inflate the price of NFTs. And then that's where you just end up seeing what we saw with the crash of just like people are realizing, this is dumb as shit, and just crash.
Did you see the episode of Jimmy Fallon where Jimmy Fallon and Madonna were talking about their NFTs?
God, that sounds cancer.
I'm so glad I don't watch Jimmy Fallon just because of that.
It was the cringiest shit I've ever seen.
I bet.
And they were both like, "Oh yeah, I paid like $100,000 or like $90,000 for this picture," and he was like, "I got my monkey. I have my monkey." Like and it was basically like, "Hey, look at me, kids. I'm still cool and relevant." And it was with Madonna of all people.
Oh, God, that just sounds like a fucking celebrity circle jerk right there. Just like, oh, look at that.
No, so not trying to derail the topic, but I learned something interesting the other day. Like the Gen Z, we're at Gen Z, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The Gen Z, what makes everything cool is anything that is like media or anything like big, like Jimmy Fallon, whatever, is considered uncool. If you're like underneath like the how do I word this? The social outcast. Mm-hmm. Everything that's social outcast is cool, but everything that's on the media on TV is considered uncool now. So when you see Madonna talking about like NFT and shit, like that's where the cringe come from for a lot of people when they understand that like, hey, this is no longer cool for you to like, as a celebrity to go on shit like this and just start advertising for your own shenanigan.
Yeah, it's kind of like a whole counterculture movement. Kind of like
the word. That's the
word. Kind of like a repeat of what you're seeing with the Gen Xers, where they had this whole thing of just rebelling against society. That's when you start seeing the beginnings of punk music and stuff like that. Was in the late 80s, early 90s, because you had all these people that were just like, we don't want to be a part of what society is deeming as the thing to be a part of. Right. We want to do our own thing. Because Gen Zers are kind of having their own version of that. You didn't really see that a whole lot with millennials and people that are around our age, like late 20s to early 20s, kind of like that, maybe even to early 30s, I would say. Right. But you do see that very heavily in Gen Z and Gen X. There was that whole generation gap that just kind of happened with that kind of mentality.
Yeah, it's due to technology, right? Am I wrong?
More or less, yeah, because I would say millennials were kind of in that in-between stage of there's a big change happening during the entire block that our generation is in. Like, my sister is 12 years older than I am. She's at the very beginning of the millennial age. And then I have people that, when I was going into college and getting my first job, I was starting to see, like, the end of that, where me at 18 and a few people that were, like, 16, 17 starting to be, like, considered the very end of what is of the era of millennials. So it was just, like, we all kind of experienced that change of, like, technology changing into a different direction. You go from... You got basically everything switching from analog to digital just about everywhere. You have a lot of things changing, like Y2K, like everything changing from a mostly paper system to now a mostly digital system for how record keeping is kept in corporations and in governments.
Right.
And you just have all of these changes happening, and we're all just seeing that. We're just like, we don't know what we have to be a part of to be considered hip, so we're all just kind of like off on our own anyway.
Right.
Because I remember when I was growing up, I'm 28. So in the first, not even 3 decades of my life, I've seen everything go from, when I was a kid, I used to watch VHS tapes.
Oh, yeah.
And my first game system was an SNES and an N64. And, just in the first 3 decades of my life, we've gone from, like, the cartridge and very, very early days of disc-based gaming systems, just to use gaming as an example, all the way to, like, you have
VR.
Billions of games on the cloud that you can play in VR anywhere as long as you have an internet connection.
Right.
And, I remember, hell, most people wouldn't even recognize, like, if you asked a Gen Zer or a really, really young kid, like, what's a Bluray? Most of them couldn't tell you what that is. I can very vividly remember when it was Sony and Bluray, and I think it was Warner Brothers and HD DVD. I don't know if either of you remember.
I remember. It was
the quote-unquote competitor to Blu-ray.
They tried to go and come up with whatever marketing scheme they could to compete against Sony with the Blu-ray technology at the time. And it was hilarious. They even was just like, we're not Blu-ray, we're HD, and then just made plastered purple all over the label for everything that was HD.
But the problem was that because Sony obviously has PlayStation, Sony made all of their PlayStation, starting with the PS3, operate off of Blu-ray.
Right.
And so Blu-ray just had a natural advantage in the market. And so where HD DVD is only focusing on DVD sales, you can't get enough of a market share when you're also competing against somebody who's making just as many DVDs as you, plus every game that's ever sold for PS3 and on is on Blu-ray.
Right.
Yeah.
So they just basically immediately lost. It was like, a year of that? Because, there were commercials from both of them that were like, oh, HD DVD so much better. It reminds me of hearing about like the VHS versus Betamax back in like the 70s. And then you get the Betamax, it would be like twice the size of a VHS, and it would take like 3 hours to rewind, but it looked a little bit better on those grainy black and white TVs.
That's gonna be a no for me, dog, man.
Yeah. So it's interesting to see some of the things that, you know, I would consider, you know, maybe not even you know, fundamental or formative for me, but just things that I very vividly remember. And like, if I asked my sister about it, who is about to turn 20, she probably wouldn't have any idea what I'm talking about.
Right. Would you understand what I say when I tell you get off the phone when I'm trying to use the internet?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, dude, like, straight up, if I had to do a project for school, because I was starting to use at-home internet when dial-up was still a thing for school projects. That's how long it's been, that to give you an idea, 28, all that. But every time a phone call would come in, I would be in the middle of reading a page to try and research something, and then a phone call comes in, and I'm just like, Mom! Mom, tell him to hurry up! I need to finish this paper!
Oh my god, dude. One of my fond memories was I started dating this girl when I was 16, and like it was during that same time. I was waiting at the phone. I was telling everyone to get off the internet, and then like, it was that phase where my brother was on the internet and was like trying to like do their AOL and AIM chat, whatever. It was like, don't get on the internet. I'm waiting for a phone call. I was telling people for like an hour. I was like, oh my god, that was so cringe, dude. That was so funny.
I can only
like
imagine.
kids don't know that level of like frustration when it comes to technology, because like right now everything's just instant. Everything's easy. You can access anything. There's no hurdle. You don't have to wait till someone to get off the internet before you can use the phone.
Or how about this? Let me call you back after 9 p.m. when it's free.
Oh no. Oh no.
I very distinctly remember one of the biggest like things I ever got in trouble for my parents was I ran the cell phone bill up like a couple months after I got my first cell phone, because this was back in the day. I mean, this was when Skype was in its infancy. I mean, I'm talking like 2009-ish time period. And me and my friend were playing this video game, and we didn't have like headsets or anything for our computers, and we didn't have like we didn't know enough about like Ventrilo or TeamSpeak or anything like that. Mm-hmm. So when we would be gaming together, I would just call him on my cell phone. And one month we got a cell phone bill that was like $500 higher than it should have been. And my parents were like furious with me, and it was so hilarious. But like, I remember when you actually had like, you had a certain amount of minutes and a certain amount of text messages you could send every month too.
Oh yeah. I before they started making it unlimited for everyone, I never got to have a benefit of like certain number of texts before you start getting charged for it. Every text on my old Nokia phone, because I never had a texting phone until high school when they started making text unlimited.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I just, first off, it was hard to go and type on that thing anyway, just because like I never could understand it at the time, how to go and type on a like little tin key to go and get the words you need put in.
Right.
But then also at the same time, it was just because it was like what, about 25 cents a text, somewhere between 15 and 25 cents a text.
Right.
So if I tried to send a text, it would always have to be a one-off, just like, hey, are you busy? Can I call right now? I can never actually go and have a full-blown conversation like I do nowadays with everyone that I talk to, basically. Like, I prefer to text instead of talk, whereas at that time, I preferred calling over texting, just because it would cost us money.
Right.
And you think about stuff like that, then you contrast it with, like, in Japan, they don't even include, like, texting and calling as, like, part of their cell phone plans.
Wait, so is it, like, free, or what do you mean?
So, no. So, actually, so the way it works in Japan, at least it was with SoftBank and AU, which are, like, the two big ones on Okinawa.
Okay.
You would basically buy a plan that had, like, 50 gigs of data. And then that was what you paid for.
Okay.
If you, like, sent somebody a text, it had to be able to be sent over data, or it cost you extra. With phone calls, it was free for domestic calls, it was free for the first like 3 minutes, and for international calls, it was free for the first minute.
Damn, you want to get a minute?
And then after that, it was like, for international calls, it was like 60 cents a minute, and for domestic calls, it was like 25 cents a minute after you went over but you paid for. And the ironic part is that, like, you know, in Asia, at least from what I've seen, being to, you know, Okinawa, mainly in Japan, Mongolia, iPhone is incredibly popular. Like, Samsung phones basically don't exist. As a matter of fact, if your Samsung phone, because I had an Android when I went out there, and I ended up having to get an iPhone.
Dang.
Because
there's no service on the Samsung or anything?
Well, I mean, there's service, but like if your phone breaks, like mine got broken in a field exercise.
Oh, shit.
And so I took it to the like phone repair shop, and my phone was like 2 years old at this point. They're like, yeah, it's going to be like $800 to fix your phone.
Oh, hell no.
And it's because like the Asian phone technicians, they don't want to touch Samsung parts because Samsung is so particular about how you fix their phones.
Wait, I thought it was the other way around. I thought Apple was the one that's like...
Well, they are, but also you got to imagine, like, if for every 20 Apple phones you fix maybe one Samsung.
Oh, so it's different.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so it's like that over there. Okay.
Whereas here you're probably going to have closer to a 50-50 split between Samsung and iPhone, just because like you don't have the same kind of issues you deal with over there.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
So it's just easier to go and be able to do whichever one you want to do.
Which, speaking of iPhone in Japan, one interesting thing that I did learn. When I got an iPhone over there, because it was produced in Japan, it had all the like Japanese region like specific settings and everything on it. And in Japanese iPhones, you can't disable the shutter sound for your camera.
Okay.
And I thought that was really, really weird. And so I was talking to somebody about it who was a local.
I think I have an idea why.
Well, yeah, it was because men were going on the subways and they were disabling the shutter sounds, and then they were sticking their phone up schoolgirl skirts and taking a bunch of pictures. And so the Japanese government told Apple, if you're going to sell iPhones in here, you have to make it to where you can't disable the shutter sound. So, like, it was really awkward to be on like Snapchat when I was with, in my room with my roommate, because every time I'd take a picture, you'd hear the shutter sound.
Right.
When I've kept my phone on vibrate since 2009, so I don't really use any kind of ringers or anything of that nature. Right. And so it was just kind of awkward for me. But I thought that was a really interesting story.
I don't want to get too deep into it. I did a little bit of research on like that situation that I'm having in Japan. So if you are a woman and you're riding the train and something like that happened to you, like what do? You go to the police, right? And like, what is the police supposed to do? How are they gonna find like a random ass guy that took a picture of your phone, and you don't know who this guy is, you don't know where he went, kind of disappears. So it got to the point where they're like, okay, I'm not gonna prioritize all my police effort into doing this. They'd rather do other stuff. I'm not saying that that's how Japan minimizes the shitty thing that happened to women on the train, but like that's kind of where they're at right now. Well, so there are like solutions where there's only like female only trains. Well, I was told, I don't know if that's true or not.
I mean, there's not really trains that much on Okinawa because it's so small. I mean, and I wasn't on mainland enough to really like go around the public transit system and stuff like that. But I mean, I do know that as far as Japan is concerned, I mean, it's still a very patriarchal society.
It is, right.
And, normally I think it's kind of silly when feminists talk about the patriarchy and stuff like that. But I mean, you do have clear examples in the world. Like, perfect example is, and obviously I'm not going to use any names, but I had some friends who were out after curfew down in a town called Naha. And they were in a bar where this old Japanese guy was like feeling all up on this probably like early 20s Japanese woman, and she was like very obviously not into it. Oh god. And so my two friends went over and like pulled the guy off of her and was like, no, this isn't what you're not going to do this. And the Japanese guy wanted to fight him and everything, and they went outside. But then once they got outside, the Japanese guy didn't want to fight anymore, and they called the cops. And so the Japanese police showed up, and now, keeping in mind, two white Marines from America in Japan, even though they were stopping a woman from getting sexually assaulted, the Japanese police were going to arrest the Marines because they were, quote-unquote, assaulting a local.
What?
And then it gets even worse. So after all that was, like, finished and they came back home, because they almost caused a quote-unquote international incident and they were out after curfew, the two Marines that stopped a woman from getting sexually assaulted went to our version of military jail for 3 months. Oh,
man. Jesus Christ.
So
there's a lot of layers in that, because I know, for one, Japan, they're not very fond of, like, outsiders, I guess.
Gaijin is the term.
Is that really the proper term?
Yeah, that's actually the typical term you hear for people who go, because it literally translates to outsider, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, okay.
So it's very much just the way that anyone that's not from Japan, just gaijin.
It's the gaijin versus the Meiji, which is why you had the Meiji Empire when the country was completely closed. And then you had that admiral that showed up and was like, hey, we'll help you beat the shogunate if you just open the country to trade. Because, we have really big boats with guns. Gunboats.
Thank you, Matthew Perry. No, not the actor.
And hopefully your listeners will catch the subtle Bill Wirtz reference.
Right.
Yeah. I still have to figure out what my listeners are. I haven't checked any statistics like age, gender, or none of that yet. But dang, man, still that sucks. That what happened to your friends, man? Like, are they? I'm assuming they're out of the military.
Oh yeah, thing? I mean they had already been on island for like 2 years when I got there, and they were about to EAS. So, EAS and end of active service. So they got out probably about a year after I got on island, and then I was on island. Excuse me, I was on island for about 3 years. So,
3 years.
And it was actually really interesting because I was on Okinawa for pretty much the majority of the whole COVID pandemic. And seeing how the American government handled COVID versus the Japanese government, because in Japan, you don't have this mentality of like, don't tread on me like you have in America, where in Japan it's very, you respect your elders, you respect people in positions of authority, which, it's just cultural differences. I'm not necessarily saying that it's a worse system.
Oh, I get it.
It's just, that's how they view the government. And another reason that I found out they were so harsh, especially on Okinawa, and I found this very fascinating, was that Okinawa has the highest per capita population of people above the age of 100 in the world.
Oh.
And if you look at the statistics on COVID, the older you are, the worse COVID is for you.
Oh.
And so they were very, very strict on the COVID lockdowns and the PPE and all that stuff over there. That was about a 6-month period where we couldn't go off base.
Yeah.
Dang.
Because they were convinced that we were carrying it.
Yeah. And when you look at the cultural differences for Japan as well, where we were going and trying to go on just like no masks and stuff like that, people were fighting against mask mandates and stuff like that. People in Japan were just like, yeah, no, we do this as a courtesy anyway whenever any of us just have the sniffles. So people are masking up left and right in Japan because they're just like, no, this makes sense for us because it's the right thing to do. It's courteous to the people around you that if you're sick or you think you are sick, you cover up to keep from infecting them with whatever you're sick with.
See, this is why I love Japan, man. Because like when you go to school, you're taught the difference between individualism and collectivism, and they always use like the Asian country as like the collective, right? And they use like the West and the U.S. as like the individual.
Yeah, because on average, Asian countries are typically more communal than most Western countries are as a whole.
That's why you have such a strong identity amongst Asian cultures. Like when we were in Mongolia for a UN exercise that was going on, it was actually really interesting to see how the South Koreans felt about the Japanese. Because, we were living in Japan, living around the Japanese people, so we were, we tried our absolute best to be, good, try to build relationships and everything with them, and I've never had a problem with the Japanese people at all. And then you go to like South Korea, and we're talking about how much we hate China and we hate North Korea, and then they, and we were just screwing around with like the South Korean Marines, who were basically started to be like the United States Marine Corps, so we're pretty much the same thing. And we were talking about, oh yeah, fuck China, fuck North Korea. And then they started chanting like, oh yeah, fuck Japan. And we're like, what?
Whoa.
Hold on.
Hold up.
Whoa.
Hold up.
And it's like, you realize that it's not about like geopolitics to them. It's about like the South Koreans are for the South Koreans only.
Right.
And they believe in, and which, there's nothing wrong with being for the sovereignty of your own country. But it can toe the line a little bit of some really overt racism towards other Asian cultures.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'm speaking this from like personal experience, but like as an Asian person, I know that like other people don't like this is normal to us. Like the Chinese don't like them, and then like Japanese don't like these other people, the Vietnamese don't like these other people, and then like to me that's normal.
Yeah.
I heard a comedian said that kind of stuck with me. Like, if you don't hate them, they're gonna hate you regardless. Yeah. So that's kind of where the racism starts. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's whatever.
And I think
I try to make light of it. I don't mean to say it like I'm not trying to appropriate. I'm just saying like that's just the funny. Well, it's not funny, but it's okay. It's kind of funny. It's kind of funny. It's like
we
just don't like each other.
Morbid.
Asian
very
people don't like
morbid.
each other. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that a lot of people in the West don't really realize that because I mean, if you think about it, a lot of what we're taught in school is very Western centric, which, I mean, it makes sense because that's where we came from.
Yeah, you got to know more about your place rather than like other places first. I get it.
But, I took a course in college that was taught by a Chinese professor, and it was about history. And it was pretty much a study of, I ended up making it into basically a study of China because, the whole course was essentially about how you study history. It was called Historiography. Ooh. You remember which class I'm talking about, Ian. Good old Professor Chang.
Yeah.
Sounds like fun.
Yeah. I only had her for one class and wasn't even a history class. It was probably my worst class ever. Oh, gosh. I hated it so much. I had to retake that class, and I still didn't get my degree. I went through it.
It'd be like that sometimes.
But basically, historiography is the study of how we have studied history throughout history.
Oh, okay. So it's like Inception.
Yeah.
Historyception, the study of history throughout history.
Yeah, studying of history, studying history. I get it.
And so the paper that I ended up writing for that class was a study about Japanese and Chinese propaganda between each other during the Chinese and Japanese wars and the Chinese Civil War that eventually led up to the Maoists taking control after World War II. And all this was from a time period of like the 1930s all the way up to like the 1950s. And it was talking about how we've looked at the like films, for example, which if you think about like the film Inglourious Bastards, where it really talks about like Hermann Göring and how he used propaganda to, basically make the Nazis look like gods.
Right.
And the same thing was going on in China and Japan when they were at civil war together. And there were civil wars inside of China, and then Japan tried to fight China when the whole the Japanese imperial empire was being established and everything like that. And propaganda was a really big part of that. And I learned a lot of what I knew about Asian cultures actually came from that class before I even lived in Asia for 3 years.
Dang,
and
came prepared.
I mean, a little bit, because when you're getting a political science degree, it's not exactly the most applicable to real life degree. It's a lot of esoteric thought about things and a lot of theory and a lot of, well, it should happen this way, or there's this law that says it should happen this way. Because a lot of people think political science, a lot about what laws should be correct. It's
it's about how you think about things and like how we should approach it into like the best optimized society, I guess.
Right. And it's like all the other social sciences. It implements a lot of sociology and a lot of history and a lot of psychology.
Right.
Because all of those social sciences really come together, and I think that's why at Winthrop you had to have another major if you majored in a social science, because you had to have something to pair it with, because everything works together.
Right.
And so ultimately, I ended up getting my degree in political science with a minor in history, and I really focused in on that. By most of the courses that I took ended up being about the history of political progression, particularly in the American South. Just because that is just so fascinating to me, the way that the political makeup of the American South has been so varied and so... Did
it ever evolve by any chance? I'm sure it does, but significant enough?
So the thing to remember about the American South is that before
Wait. When you say American side, I'm thinking like Southerner, pro-slave, or like before that or after that, or like where
pretty much all. So basically, the best course I think I ever took in college, and I can never remember the professor's name, but he was a really, really tall professor who everybody loved. He would show up to our exam days in like a t-shirt that said South Carolina beer, and he would tell us that he took questions off of the exam because if he had to spend more time grading those questions, that was less time he could spend drinking beer. And so like he was just a super chill professor, but he actually had a doctorate in Southern politics from the University of Mississippi, Ole Miss.
Southern politics, okay.
Yeah, so this dude had a doctorate in that. And the course was a 500 level political science course about politics in the South during and after Reconstruction. So we're talking the end of the Civil War through like modern day.
Okay.
And it talked about how, pretty much from the end of the Civil War up through the Civil Rights Movement, the Democrats were very, very entrenched in power in the South. That's where you get like the Dixiecrat Party with, your Strom Thurmonds of the world and people of that nature. And good old South Carolina, one of our most infamous governors of all time, his name was literally Pitchfork Ben Tillman. and he would go to places in North Carolina and give speeches trying to influence their elections and tell white people that the black people were coming for their wives and coming for their daughters. And he said that a day that went by without to use his language, without a Negro being lynched was a bad day. So he was very, very, very racist. And I'm talking, this is like 1920s. So I mean, this isn't even like way back in the 1800s when this is we're talking like the Roaring 20s, and we've got people in South Carolina as the governor saying these things.
Right.
And he's a really difficult character to talk about because Tillman was actually the guy who gave the land grants for Clemson and Winthrop University, which is why the main building at Winthrop is called Tillman Hall.
So you can't really say much about him.
Right. Yeah, so like he did do good things, but he was a soulless, horrible, demonic person who.
That's not something we talk about. We just put it in the back of the book or something.
And then of course you had Strom Thurmond, who had the longest filibuster on record.
How long was that?
25 hours and 7 minutes.
Oh God.
Because he didn't want the Senate or the House of Representatives to vote on the Civil Rights Act. Mm-hmm. Another good old South Carolina senator. So it's really interesting being from South Carolina and loving my state, and I do have state pride, and I'm a proud Southern man, but at the same time having to realize that not that long ago there were some really, really shitty people that came out of my state.
Right.
And I think that ever since the 60s and 70s, when you really saw the Democrats kind of lose their hold on the South, that's when they're starting to get better. Obviously, everywhere still has work to do. There's going to be racists until the end of time.
Yeah, of course.
Racism is inherent to the human condition.
That's just some reality you just got to accept.
Yeah.
Racism comes up when people experience either trauma or stuff, and you can't fix trauma, or you can't prevent trauma for everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know? I mean,
it's just a whole me versus them thing where you're always going to have one side battling another side until like basically every side is just on the same side. And I don't think there's ever going to be a time where there's not going to be some sort of disagreement going on in human history, because that's just how humanity is. Like, we're either we love you to death or we hate you to death. There is no in between.
Right. Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, talking about disagreement, I've been wanting to bring this up, and I think you guys saw it coming with the whole Roe versus Wade thing. Mm-hmm. I have pretty heavy opinionated on that, and I mean, does it matter that it came from like a southern? I'm a southern. I count myself as southern, right? I'm southern, North Carolina, southern-ish. I love my sweet tea. I love my waffles. I love my chicken. Like.
Okay, with your boneless chicken and waffles. Like, holy shit, that was a big ordeal for me when I tried to have chicken and waffles in Wisconsin one time at this resort.
Wait, what happened? Wait,
so,
hold on, what?
Just a quick little story time thing. It's actually two stories because there's a little thing that comes up after that. I've told you about it, my run-in with some people at this Cuban place.
Oh, yeah. I remember that story.
So it starts off where a few years back, I went on vacation with some friends from college to this place called Kalahari. It's a Savannah-themed resort. There's multiple locations, but we went to the one in Wisconsin Dells up in the Midwest.
Okay.
And while we were there, we decided that one of the days we were there, we were going to try and get some breakfast. And I decided that I was going to get chicken and waffles. They brought it to me. It looked like a normal chicken breast, but the moment I cut into it, it still had fucking bone in it. And up until this point in my life, there was at no point in time did anyone ever think that the way you cook chicken and waffles is with boned in chicken.
Right.
You always use boneless because what's the point of having chicken and waffles if you can't cut it all together and eat the chicken with the waffle in one single slice straight to your mouth?
Or pick it up and eat it like a chicken and waffle.
Or just go and fold the waffle over the chicken breast and just eat it like a sandwich. It's like, at what point in time did anyone ever think that just using a regular chicken breast, not a boneless breast, was an okay thing to do? And I just couldn't fathom how they fucked this up.
See, what they didn't understand is there's a difference between chicken and waffle and chicken and waffle.
Yeah.
There's a huge difference.
They thought when he wanted chicken and waffles, he wanted chicken, and waffles.
Right.
No, I want chicken and waffles.
Right. Chicken and waffles. It's a single dish that you can eat just fine without any issue whatsoever.
Look, I don't want pasta and tomato. I want tomato sauce on spaghetti. Yeah. There's a difference.
So here's a southern litmus test for you if you're curious if you count as southern. What do you think about shrimp and grits?
Oh, I fucking love shrimp and grits. That's my signature dish. That's my signature dish.
He's one of us.
Dude,
he's just a little more tan skinned than us, but he's one of us.
Oh yeah. Dude, there's a restaurant down the street called Metro Diner, and that was the first time I ever had like bougie ass like shrimp and grits, dude. Oh my god. That inspired me.
There's this place in Uptown, and you remember this place because we took Ruth and Evan there when on their words are failing me right now on their wedding night, and it's called Mert's Heart and Soul. It's in Uptown Charlotte, and let me tell you something, brother. It's a soul food restaurant.
Ooh.
They have like the jalapeno cornbread, and they have like the chicken fried steak and all this other stuff. I went there before a Panthers game one day with my parents, and we got breakfast because it was like a 12 o'clock kickoff. And so we stopped at Mert's for breakfast, and I got shrimp and grits there. And it comes out looking like slop, but it was the most delicious shrimp and grits I've ever had in my, because it was a combo meal. So it was basically like you take the breakfast option, and you got like, you could pick two options from the list of breakfast items.
Okay.
And so I got shrimp and grits, and then like ham, spinach, and mushroom omelet. And so I had an omelet with a bowl of shrimp and grits, and it was just one of the best breakfasts I've ever had in my entire life. And of course, because it's a soul food restaurant, everything comes with your choice of biscuits or cornbread. So
dude, people do not understand how cool and like how good shrimp and grits is. Like there's a show called MasterChef with Gordon Ramsay. Yep. I think it was near the it was probably the finals, but somebody made like some bougie ass shrimp and grits, bro. And like once you see that shit, dude, like dude, shrimp and grits is where it's at.
MasterChef is one of those shows that I'm torn about because I love the idea of MasterChef, and I love everything that it's about, especially with Gordon Ramsay. That man he can go and create some of the best food out of the weirdest ingredients I've ever seen in my life. So it's like I love what he does, but at the same time with MasterChef, I am also a firm believer of presentation doesn't matter as much as the flavor. If you can create the ugliest looking bit of slop, but it tastes like heaven, I don't give a shit about the first part. The second part is what I was after all along, even if I didn't know it at the time.
No, I feel you on that, man, dude. I can't remember what. There was a blind lady in there.
Yeah, I remember that.
Oh yeah. Shit! Hold up! I got her book. Let me show y'all real quick.
I know exactly who you're talking about.
And it was actually insane at how good she was, like, as a cook.
Look, I got her book.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
I got her fucking book.
Yeah, Christine
awesome.
Ha.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, she's fucking dope, man. She can't see, but like by the end of the day, when we eat her food, it's not about like what it looks like. It just tastes.
Yeah.
And it feels so good. And like, am I biased when I say that you only get that from like the southern type of people?
In terms of like it matters more about taste than about presentation. I would agree. Because I mean,
because I feel like up north it's kind of more corporate, more like pumping out factory kind of deal. Right. Maybe I'm just biased. I don't know.
Well, I mean, if anytime you go to like let's take a like a Southern cookout or something like that, it's not to say that Southerners can't present food well, but it's that we don't really care about that as much. Because I think about like I had a neighbor up until he had to move away. His name was Joe, and he used to do this thing once a year. He'd do what's called a pig picking.
Ooh.
And he'd go down to a butcher shop and he'd pick a whole pig, and he would dig a pit in his backyard and fill it with like coals and stuff like that, and he would
rotate it?
He would smoke this pig over 48 hours.
48.
And then he would make a big mess of baked beans and potato salad and a bunch of cornbread to go with it. And he would always have so much that he would just go down our street. Because I live on a gravel road out in the country, so we're pretty friendly with the neighbors and everything, except for the crazy neighbor that lives next to me and my grandmother. But that's a story. That's another story. Well, actually, there's a lot of stories.
There's a lot of stories about that, and I've been there for a couple of them.
And we can get to her, but we're talking about Joe right now. But he would just come down randomly, and he would just have like, those big pans that you cook a turkey in, like if you put a turkey in the oven?
Yeah.
It would just be full of like pulled pork. And he would just like set it, or he would make like one of those and then bring down a whole thing of mac and cheese too. He'd just be like, felt like making dinner for you guys tonight. And I mean, Joe was one of those guys, he was just an old school hippie burnout, and all he cared about was getting high and making really good barbecue. And He was really good at both of those things. He was the coolest dude. He found out I was into like classic rock and stuff like that, and he would like burn me mixtapes of like, or not mixtapes, but CDs of like just random live performances of like ZZ Top or what's his name? The guy who did why am I blanking on him right now? I consider him like one of the greatest guitarists ever, Stevie Ray Vaughan. He would burn me like live performances of Stevie Ray Vaughan and stuff like that, and he was a really cool dude. But him and his wife were both on disability, and they ended up having to move out because her health was deteriorating and his health was deteriorating. So they couldn't. I mean, it was like a 2-acre plot of land and a really big house it was a tri-level, so they couldn't go up and down the stairs. But they were really cool guys, and he was awesome with his food. His pig picking barbecue was always the best.
Dang, man. Making me hungry now.
How do you think I feel? I haven't had anything to eat today.
I can make you something after this. Or we can go somewhere. We'll figure that out later.
That's an idea. But like,
Ian, do you want to tell your perspective on some of the Kathy stories?
Wait. Kathy is the neighbor of your grandma?
Yeah,
crazy Kathy.
So you turn right down off of the main road to go down my road. And you got Joe's house like right here on the right. And then you have our neighbors, Rob and Maria. Rob's a white guy. Maria's from, I want to say, Uruguay. Okay. So they're a really, really sweet interracial couple. And I've always been really good friends with Maria. She's been awesome my whole life. And my parents' house is right across from that. And then my grandparents live right next to Rob and Maria. Or, well, I guess not my grandmother because my grandfather passed last year. But and then Kathy lives directly next to my grandparents.
Okay, so this lady has a lot of crazy stories going on. Like, what's the premise?
So just to set the stage, we're pretty sure that she killed her husband. Oh, but it's never been proven.
Did she feed him to a tiger?
No, she's not quite as bad as Carol Baskin.
Oh, never mind.
Need tigers for the Carol Baskin Care Bears and stuff.
And then after her husband. And then after her husband died, we're pretty sure that the way that she used to make money was she had an old CB shortwave radio, and she would tap into the CB waves of the truckers that were going down to the paper mill that's right down the road, and basically be a lot lizard for them and be a prostitute for truckers.
Oh, okay.
You never heard the term lot lizard before?
No, this is my first time.
Oh, yeah, lot lizards were the old biddies that when they were still young would go and just like sleep with the truckers for money and at the truck stops.
She's a chicken head. Okay.
Yeah. And and I don't know if it's important to this story or not, but I just think it's funny, so I'm going to throw it in here. We call her Tripod because she lost her arm when she was a kid.
That was cold-blooded.
Forgot about that.
I mean, it's really tragic because the story that we've all been told is that it got caught in the washing machine when she was a little kid and got ripped off. I don't know, how that happened.
She got a strong washing machine.
Right?
What the heck?
They didn't have safety standards on those things like they do now.
I guess so.
So she lost one of her arms, and she's strung out on drugs all the time, and she goes through phases where she's a nice person, and then phases where she's insane. And I think I know the story that Ian's going to tell, but I really want to hear his perspective on it. So
I'm vaguely remembering it, but I want to say that one of those stories has to do with one of your either 4th of July or one of your New Year's fireworks displays that you and your parents always threw. And it was before you left for the Marine Corps. It was like the last time that you were in the States before you got deployed in before you got stationed in Japan. And I distinctly remember one of the bottle rockets that we shot off happened to veer off. Instead of going straight up, it went straight for like 2 feet and then immediately veered to the right in the direction of Kathy's house.
It went sideways.
Yeah, it just basically went sideways and went off right above her porch. And the next thing we all knew, we just hear this crazy old lady going and screaming from the front of her porch, "What the fuck are you doing?"
And she was on the porch. It was like, she would talk shit about my mom because my mom got pregnant with me when she was a teenager, and then she would talk shit about me because I've always been a bigger guy, and then she would talk shit about my grandparents and all this other stuff.
Like they'll pick anything.
Yeah, literally like anybody, and she would just try to get on our nerves. And this is the only time I've ever seen my grandfather like yell back at her, and he told her to take her tripod ass back in the house and shut the fuck up.
One leg at a time, right?
Yeah. But see, it was so funny because like my grandfather was really, really big about fireworks. He loved fireworks.
Oh yeah, the 4th of July kind of guy.
Oh yeah, 4th of July, and there was actually a fireworks shop down on Carowinds Boulevard. It's the one that looks like a big white warehouse.
Phantom fireworks.
Yeah, it's now Phantom, but it used to be called something else. I can't remember what it was called.
Hey. What's up?
Oh, we have a late arrival.
We got a guest. No, what's up?
Oh, hey.
Hi, Megan's in the club.
I was here the whole time, I swear.
Yeah, she was hiding in the corner.
Don't believe her lies and propaganda.
Traffic was terrible.
Traffic was terrible.
Yeah, there's a soccer game in Charlotte today, so...
Don't degrade my grade, please.
Next thing you know, she's going to say the dog ate her homework. We don't have a dog in the apartment. We don't have a cat either.
That's my cat.
Tony's cat is not your cat.
That's my cat. That's my poo-poo pee-pee.
Nice little interjection.
Yeah. But yeah, so we used to go to this fireworks shop, and the guy who ran it, he was ex-Army, and really big tall guy from, I mean, he was like 6'7", from, I want to say Arkansas. And he would always get us the quote-unquote illegal fireworks that were slightly over grain count. And he would always give us like really good discounts on them. So we always got like way too many fireworks that were way too loud. And Kathy would always just act a fool every single time we'd pop fireworks.
And I don't know why, but that just immediately brings me back to when Evan got so pissed drunk on Kraken and started wanted to go and fight Rob's neighbor when he still lived in Fort Mill.
I don't think I was there for that one.
You weren't. This was like the first or second year of you being in Japan.
Okay.
And it was basically like our first 4th of July without you since we started becoming friends with you.
Gotcha.
So it was just it was.
Yeah, because pretty much after we all met at Tech, like...
Yeah, we all met at York Tech. You met Rob, and then he kind of brought you in, and then we all just kind of found Evan.
Yeah.
We don't know where he came from. He was just, like, there. He was just there one minute, and we were just like, you know what? You're cool. We adopt you.
Which is why he's the cryptid of the group.
Yeah, right. Meanwhile, the cryptid of Winthrop right here joining the... call now.
I heard y'all speaking my name, so I just showed up.
You have been summoned.
Yeah.
Getting a little hot behind the ears.
Yeah. But no, like, he was having a great time. He was, like, actually pretty calm for how Evan tends to be when he starts getting drunk.
Mm-hmm.
So then we're just enjoying the whole thing, fireworks going off. Then the next thing we know, it's, like, not even 11 o'clock yet, and this dude, you know, where, like, all the tall, super tall bushes that are basically trees, all those that would line this dude's property across from Rob's house.
Yeah.
He comes out and just immediately starts going off about how, like, he's trying to sleep, it's getting late and stuff like this. It's like, you do realize what holiday it is, right? You do realize what happens all night everywhere in America during this time, right?
And you do realize that we're in South Carolina, not North Carolina, who has draconian laws about what you can and can't shoot off in fireworks.
What time were you shooting them off, though?
It was like late, but it was your typical like probably it was a weekend. I forget exactly what day it was, but it was definitely a weekend night where we were just shooting off these fireworks.
Oh, I remember that 4th of July because I was stuck in Mongolia.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's right.
Meanwhile, in the middle of nowhere, happy 4th of July.
Yeah, so fun story about that. We went to Mongolia, like I told you before, about to do a UN basically training mission with the Mongolian guys who were getting ready to go to Sudan. And it came time for us to leave because the mission was over, and China just decided, yeah, no, the Marines can't fly over China to get back to Japan.
Damn.
And we were all kind of like, what is going on right now? Because you've got to think, with Mongolia, you have China right below it, and the place that we were in Mongolia was about 200 miles from Russia. And this is, you know, Donald Trump's president, and tensions with Russia were getting high, and there was legitimately points where we had plans about, like, if the Russians or the Chinese showed up, like, how we were going to break into the Mongolian armory and steal their weapons and go out. Like, these were like legitimate scenarios that we were going through of, like, how do we need to act if this happens?
How do you prepare?
Right.
Jesus Christ.
So we were stuck there for like an extra week and a half. And it got so bad because they had only prepared enough food for the duration of the operation.
Right.
And so by the end of it, we were literally eating like mutton soup for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Yikes.
And it was disgusting. And but yeah, so that was we were supposed to be back in Okinawa by July 4th, but I remember July 1st we had our promotions, because you always have promotions on 1st of the month in the Marine Corps. And then that night, there was a big party for all the guys that got promoted to corporal. And the next day, the Mongolian general who was running the camp that we were at came over and was like, yeah, by the way, your guys were way too loud last night because they were drunk as hell. And because where we were staying was where they did the basic training for the Mongolian military. And apparently we'd woke up a bunch of the like recruits or whatever. And so,
oh no! How awful!
And so we got put on a no drinking order.
Dang.
For the rest of our time, even though nobody followed it.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, we had a major, and I won't say his name, but we had a major who he would walk out with a water bottle with brown liquid in it. And we were like, oh, did you use like, some tea or so? He's like, no, bro, this is Jack Daniels. At like 10 o'clock in the morning, he'd be walking around with a water bottle full of Jack Daniels. And then by like 12 p.m., it was clear liquid inside there. It's like, oh yeah, it's this, there was this vodka in Mongolia called Chinggis.
Ooh.
Big Chinggis.
Yeah, well, fun fact about Chinggis is that's actually the name of Genghis Khan.
Oh.
So his name is actually Chinggis Khan. But I guess through Americanization or whatever, it ended up being Genghis.
Rough translation.
Yeah, something like that.
Sounds like a pronunciation error at that point.
Pretty much, yeah. So pretty much everything in Mongolia, if it is a thing that you can buy, there is a version of it that is called Chinggis. And so there's this vodka called Chinggis vodka, and you can buy a handle of it, 1.5 liters, for $11.
Ooh.
And it tastes like $11 vodka.
Oh no!
But it'll get you there.
You messed with my feelings, bro. I thought that was a good deal.
Well, I mean, it is a good deal when that's your only option.
I guess.
It was actually funny. The first night we were allowed to drink, we drank the entire bar out of alcohol.
Oh my god! Jesus Christ!
Sounds about right.
We drank an entire keg of beer in 15 minutes. And then every group that would come up, because it was cheaper to buy the bottle from the shelf, because they would mark it up slightly, but you'd still be paying like $15 for a bottle from a bar. And so instead of just buying drinks, everybody would just go up and buy a bottle.
Right.
And so by the end of the night, everybody just bought bottles, and all the vodka was drank.
Dang.
And so they were just out of alcohol, so we couldn't drink for the next like 3 nights because they had to wait for a resupply.
Oh man, that bar must have made so much money.
Oh yeah.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Oh, they loved us.
Dang.
And it was funny because we had to let the officers and the staff NCOs go first, because if they didn't, when the lower enlisted showed up, there wouldn't be alcohol for them to drink.
Dang.
So the officers and staff NCOs got like an extra 2 hours to drink before we could go up there to drink.
Dang.
Privilege. That's nice. Shit, man.
You remind me of my being trapped, almost nearly causing a international crisis in China.
Oh Lord.
I think I've told you this.
Yeah, I've heard the story before.
But I was coming back from Japan, and as we all know, the U.S. is not allies with China. So I did not realize this when I booked my flight, because I think it changed between the time I booked and the time I actually got to the airport, but you cannot enter China without a visa. And the only exemption is a 24-hour layover, essentially. And things got a little complicated, and they had to split hairs. Basically, what ended up happening is the really nice lady at the airport was trying to speak to me, and then she realized this wasn't going to go anywhere, and she basically had to call the embassy in China to request permission for me to go through China on a 24-hour layover, essentially. And I got it, but that was really funny because the lady just turned around, looked at me, and she's like, you might want to look at some other flights while I'm calling the Chinese embassy. And I just hear them talking. She actually could speak 3 languages, which was fucking crazy. So she was speaking Chinese on the phone, speaking to her coworker in Japanese, and she would tell me something, and then she'd be like, "Oh, wait," and then like it was a triangle of communication for like about 5 to 10 minutes, and I was sweating bullets at this point because I'm like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I don't want to be here much longer because I need to get going because I don't have anywhere I can stay. And she was finally like, yeah, you can go through, and I'm like,
Jesus.
Thank God.
It's about time.
So I stopped in Shanghai. So keep in mind, again, I only have 24 hours in this country. I cannot stay 24 and a half hours. I cannot stay 24 hours and 1 minute. It is 24 hours, and I need to be out of that country or on a plane, getting out of that country. So I stopped in Shanghai, which was weird. I had a 16-hour layover there. I paid the cheapest I ever will in my miserable life for a spa, full spa treatment. It was like $40. It will never happen in my life again. But then I went to Chongqing, which is just a hop and a skip away. It's about a 2-hour, because that's where all the international flights to the U.S. start, in Chongqing before you go to Shanghai or wherever. Also, it was the cheapest. But my Google whatever notifications told me, like, oh, your flight's been pushed back an hour, like, for your Chongqing to New York flight. And I was like, cool, I got another hour just sitting in an empty airport doing nothing because my Sims didn't work. My internet does not work. You don't have internet because you have to have the Chinese special Sims to access the internet. So I'm just sitting there at this point counting tiles on the ground, and then I look, I'm like, oh, it's like it's the original time, close to the original time, but I was like, oh, it's time for me to check my bag in. It was literally like out of a sitcom at that point. I just walk up like stupid American, like, hey, I'm ready. And the 2 people at the counter just like staring right at me like, you aren't supposed to be here. You need to be on the plane right now. Oh my God. That plane leaves in like 5 minutes, lady. So they actually had to like rush me through the security because you get like a little piece of paper with like your 24-hour, it's basically like a little piece of paper you show them. So I showed them the piece of paper, and they're just like, you need to get the fuck on that plane. So I went through security. They literally tore my bag apart as quickly as they could, because they have to, like, when you're doing it, China has some weird rules, like they have to search your whole thing and look at the electronics. They literally, like, tore the bag apart, pulled everything out, looked right through it, just shoved it all in there. They took out one of my camera batteries. They're like, what is this? And I was like, camera battery. And they're like, cool. Put it back in, zipped it up. They're like, okay, get the fuck into the gate. And I was sprinting right down there. Yeah. And right when I got there, they started a final call for the boarding. And
Dang, sounds like a lot of anxiety going on there.
I was stressed. I was very stressed. I was ready to call like the U.S. Embassy. I was ready to pull favors. I was ready to pull anything out of my ass to not get arrested and thrown in jail, because that was a potential possibility. Probably wouldn't have done it in hindsight. They probably would have been like, you cannot leave this airport. But yeah, it was a little frightening not knowing what would happen if I missed that flight, because they only had like New York flights like once every 24 hours or something like that. So like there was no do-overs.
It wasn't just like, oh, I'll catch the next one in a half hour.
No, it's not. Yeah, and also this was at night, so I would have had to stay overnight anyway.
Yikes. Now or never.
Yeah, it was like Mission Impossible music.
Right.
Like everything I owned was in a duffel bag, a suitcase, and a backpack, and I was just running I was running as fucking fast as I possibly could.
Running for my fucking life.
Like I almost ran a lady over. Like. Ooh, I still think about that sometimes.
It does not sound like a good time.
And the funny thing is that there's probably a bunch of Chinese families that are going to tell the story for years to come about the crazy American lady they saw running through the airport one day.
I was just trying to catch my next flight to... I was just trying to catch my next flight to the Capitol, and all of a sudden this crazy fucking blonde chick just runs right past me, nearly runs me over. She says something in English, I can't fucking understand what she's saying, and then she just keeps going.
There's probably more stories about me in Japan than there are in China, let's be very honest at this point.
Well, that's fair.
You're the dumb bitch
So there was
who dropped your keys down the elevator shaft.
Did I ever tell you about that American chick that came into the infirmary about to pass out from blood loss on her finger?
Oh, I didn't even go to the infirmary.
Well, still, whoever you went to for that Band-Aid.
Context here. So I sliced my finger open playing a shooting gallery because it was an old pullback rifle. You know, kind of looks like a M1 Like you pull it, open it up, you put the cork in. So Megan didn't follow directions when it clearly said in Japanese and English. So there's no excuses on my part. Where it says, "Do not put your finger near the latch because you will cut your finger."
Yep.
And I just kept shooting, and there was this little kid and his mom, and they turn around and they like point at me, like start like yelling a little bit, like they're like ah, and I look at my hand and there's blood coming down my hand because I nicked the side of my finger 2 or 3 times. Stare at my finger, stare at the guy, and I'm like, "You got a Band-Aid?" And he's like, "Band-Aid, Janai?" And I'm like, "Fuck." And I had to look up, like, blood's still going down. It slowed down a little bit, but it's still, like, all over my hand. I pull out my smartphone. I'm like, cool. This is a big park. So on the other side of the park, which is, like, 10-minute walk, is a gas station that would probably have Band-Aids. So, like, cool, we have a side quest. Let's go. So...
Was it a Lawson's?
That was a Family Mart.
Oh, okay.
And I'm just, at this point, it hurt a little bit, but, like, I didn't feel it. It just felt like pinches when I was doing it. I didn't even fucking pay attention, because Megan bitch, dumb logic. But anyway, walking, I start feeling a little woozy, because as anemic, you start losing blood. So the panic level is slowly starting to go up as I'm starting to feel weird. So it's like a skit where you just start slowly like walking, like, oh, it's all fine, and you start walking faster and faster, faster, faster. I finally like burst into this place like, I need a Band-Aid, and they're like, here's your Band-Aid. And I just, at that point I had to like sit and had like those little jelly packs, and just I had to sit for a minute because I was about to fall over. Oof. Like I was dizzy.
In your experience, which one's better, Family Mart or Lawson's? I know that's a loaded question.
Asking the tough questions now.
You're wrong, 7-Eleven, bitch.
7-Eleven. 7-Eleven. You mean the thing that we already had experienced because there was one right across the street from campus?
Okay, but Japanese 7-Eleven is just on a different level.
That's like S tier. This is like...
It's like fine dining on that roller food, man. Let me tell you.
You could get like a full-ass lunch for like $5. Like, it's... insane. Like I used to get like rice with scrambled egg and like the sweet sausage and mix it up. Oh my god, that is the best thing ever. I wish that was here, but it's not. And every time I see a 7-Eleven now, I just remember all the delicious food that was in Japan, and I die a little inside every single time I see it.
7-Elevens in Japan are never, in America are never going to be on the same level as Japanese ones.
Same thing with McDonald's.
It's not even the same company, realistically, at this point.
Like, honestly, when I left for Japan and came back, like, 7-Eleven stepped their game up a little bit. They seem a bit more like the Japanese one now, because when I left, there was only really, like, pizza that you could order, but now it's a bunch of other stuff, too.
But it's still greasy-ass convenience store food.
Yeah, true, but, yeah, it's starting to pick up a little bit, getting closer.
Yeah. And then if you go to the right 7-Eleven, you can walk in and just all of a sudden you get hit in the face with loud rap music bumping in the background.
I mean, in America, I feel like when you're talking about S-tier roller food, you've got to mention QT in the conversation. I mean, their roller food. Plus, I mean, their kitchen is just... Their pizza, and specifically, their breakfast pizza. Oh my god. When me and Evan worked at that cabinet shop, we would stop at the QT that was a block away every single morning and get a bang and like 2 slices of breakfast pizza apiece. And it was...
Sounded like
so good.
Sounded like my standard breakfast whenever I was working at Harris Theater and had to do an opening shift.
I hope that we get more of the I hope we have more Buc-ee's open around here.
Our Lord and Savior Buc-ee's, as where you don't have any of your stuff out. Oh, he has his little sticker on the cabinet.
Aha.
He has a bunch of shirts. Tony loves Buc-ee's.
They're opening one. Is it Charleston or Myrtle Beach are opening it up?
Nope. Florence, South Carolina.
Florence?
In the middle of
nowhere. All the fucking places to open up your first location in South Carolina.
Like, why not Myrtle Beach? Why not Charleston? Why not Columbia? Spartanburg.
Fucking
has
Buford.
to have clean bathrooms. The closer you get to Myrtle Beach, the more impossible it is to maintain clean bathrooms.
Oh, if that's the case, then Buford would have been the primo location for that.
Depending on which side of the intercoastal waterway you're on.
I mean, we don't have to talk about that.
But you know I'm right.
I don't want you to be right. Oh God.
Well, I think we got a good enough session today, and I appreciate all the funny stories and all the educational stuff that you guys taught me now, with especially you, Robbie, with all the everything that you've experienced.
No problem at all. It's always fun for me.
Yeah, I definitely want to do this more often. You know, like whenever I invite people to the podcast, I like to learn more than like I'm actually preaching. I love to preach. Don't get me wrong, but when it comes to like learning more, like that's.
I mean, it is called Tony's Temple after all.
It is. No, you mentioned you're right. It is. But
do I have to do any holy sacraments to be on the podcast?
Questionable rituals.
You must bring cat treats to the cat god.
Yeah, you got to sacrifice your firstborn with chips, salt and vinegar only.
Okay, but I like salt and vinegar chips.
Well, it's called sacrifice for a reason.
Here, take all my salt and vinegar. Fuck that shit.
False prophet.
No, for you it would be pizza flavored Pringles.
Ew.
Actually, no. I've always been a barbecue fan for Pringles.
Oh, it's not a bad idea actually.
They're really good.
Yeah. Barbecue's always been my thing though.
I
So
love them.
barbecue Pringles, nothing compares when it comes to other flavors.
The barbecue ones are really good.
Barbecue flavor, best flavor. Those are the best Pringles. Especially when you get the honey barbecue.
What?
Ooh,
Nah, I
baby.
don't like the honey barbecue.
Sour cream and onion.
Now who's the false prophet?
That's the only. No, listen. Let me be clear.
All right, let's schedule fight night.
Those fighting words fair.
We'll discuss the supremacy of different Pringles flavors
Let's go
next time that we're over.
We got some good rivalries going on the next episode. Okay, but with all that being said, thank you everyone for listening to the podcast. If you like what you heard, hit the like button. If you want to subscribe for more stuff, the subscribe button is also below. And with that being said, we're out. Peace.
Brr.
Farewell.